What's going on, everyone? Scott here, and welcome back to the channel. So we are here. It is the Survivor 50 finale week. We are here. We are just about to the Survivor 50 finale here on Wednesday night. Now, I just wanted to come, like we do every season, give our finale preview, but then also gonna dive into how each of the 5 finalists could potentially win this thing. In the finale episode here, this last couple days of Survivor. So we're gonna go into that. Then we're going to give what I actually think will happen on the finale on Wednesday. No spoilers on my part. Obviously, we do get the live finale too, so it's not like there's any spoilers out there for who actually wins or anything. But obviously, just going off of gut feel from these episodes and where we sit at right now. But before we do jump into that, if you could just hit that like and subscribe button down there. We'll have more Survivor 50 content on the channel. Obviously, we'll be back Thursday morning, like always, recapping the finale episode of the season 50 of Survivor. But then we'll be back after the season 2, kind of talking about where this season ranks among the new era seasons, returning seasons, and whatnot overall. So we'll have plenty of Survivor content on the channel. And, once we come back in the fall as well for 51, you can bet that we will be here then as well. So just make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video. So what I kind of did was just a quick little exercise of the final 5 survivors. Is I did it if it was a final 5 vote almost, where would the 9 jury members put their votes if all 5 of the Survivor finalists were up for a vote for $1 million? So the jurors currently: Dee, Chrissy, Coach, Christian, Stephanie, Emily, Ozzy, Devins, and Suri. So with that, I have 2 people, and this hurts my heart, but Rizzo, I had Rizzo not receiving any votes if it was the final 5. That's why. I think Rizzo still has a shot to win, but then I have Joe not receiving any votes either. But with the 9 jury votes, I had Tiffany. I think she, right now, with that 5, would get Suri and Dee. I had Aubrey getting Devins, Christian, and Emily. So that's 5 of the 9. You can do the math that I had 2 people not getting votes. So that means I think Jonathan gets Ozzy, and then I think he gets the honor and integrity group of Coach, Chrissy, and Stephanie. That's where I think it would land with a final 5 vote of just the 9 jurors. Obviously, that's not going to happen. We're going to get down to a final 3. But I thought that was just kind of a fun exercise to see where we sat with everyone in and kind of where I think things need to go for these players to win. I will say before I jump into each individual, I think going into this finale, I think there's 2 people in Tiffany and Aubrey who are kind of the clear-cut favorites. If they get to the final 3, without one another, I think it's a clear win for either of them. Then kind of the next group, I think it's Rizzo and Jonathan right there. If one of the top 2 I mentioned, and Tiffany and Aubrey, aren't there, I think they have the next best shot to win. And then Joe, has a shot, but I think it's a farther shot than where everyone else is at right now. So we'll start with my guy, the man, the myth, the legend, R-I-Z-G-O-D, Riz God, baby. But I think his best path is clear, kind of. I just mentioned it. If he gets Tiffany and he gets Aubrey out, I think he has a good shot to win this thing. Jonathan would obviously get the honor and integrity people, but I think he would be able to steal some of those votes that Tiffany and Aubrey would get. I think he'd be able to get Suri, Devins, Emily, Christian, Dee. So if you do that math, that's 5 of the 11 potential jury members that we would have. So of that, you either need Jonathan and Joe, if that was his final 3 that we're talking about, to either split votes, or he would need to convince, I think, Tiffany to vote for him. If Aubrey goes out, I think she would potentially vote for Jonathan. I could be wrong. Maybe would vote for Rizzo. But that's kind of how I read it. So I think that would be 5 of 11 for him, that either get Tiffany as that 6th or count on Jonathan and Joe to split votes to get that majority, with 6 obviously being the majority of an 11-person jury. Next up, Tiffany. I think main objective for Tiffany at the 5 and at the 4, should she be around for both of those, is to get Aubrey out. If she gets Aubrey out, I think she's a clear-cut favorite. I think her and Aubrey have similar strength of resumes. Not similar resumes in that they've done the same things, but they have strong resumes in certain ways that, different categories, but can kind of add up to, be the same. I guess in a way it is kind of what I'm thinking with both of them. And obviously Tiffany coming on strong last week with her back against the wall, everyone literally competing to work together to try to make sure she did not win that individual immunity necklace. because they wanted to get her out, and back was against the wall. She came up with a clutch win as well. And we unfortunately just didn't see a lot of her at the beginning of the season, but she has just ascended throughout this second half of the season. Love Tiff, wanted to see more of her this whole season. So I'm glad we're seeing a lot of her at the end too. So I think that's the best route. If she gets Aubrey out, I think she has the best shot of the remaining group, as long as you don't kind of like fumble the spill the chili or whatnot going forward at that final three tribal. And I think she would be very good, obviously, at that final three tribal as well. I think if Rizzo and Tiffany were at that final three, I think that would be an incredible final tribal. Just mentioning even them too. But that's kind of where I see Tiffany going. And I think too, this will kind of bleed into Aubrey, but I think when it comes to Tiffany and Aubrey, I don't think they can both be there at three. I think if they're both there at three, I think they split too many of the in-between votes that are on the jury. And I think the honor and integrity group just kind of gives it to Jonathan or Joe, whichever one is there. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong on that they don't just vote for their honor and integrity, group mates, whatever, that they actually vote for who played the best game of Survivor. But I wouldn't hold my breath on that. So I think between Tiffany and between Aubrey, one of them has to go before the final three. And if one of them does and one of them gets there, I think that person has the best shot to win. So like I said, leading right into Aubrey, I think if she gets there without Tiff, I think she has a clean win. I think I think she might have a cleaner win than Tiffany if she gets there, as opposed to if Tiffany gets there. I guess me meaning that is because, or I guess trying to make sense of what I'm saying is that I think Aubrey played a little bit more in the middle, so she worked with more groups. And I mean, Tiffany has had to as well, but then she was kind of, able to get into that alliance with Suri, with Rizzo, with Ozzy, and work together for a handful of those votes, where Aubrey, it seemed like, was constantly at the bottom, which some juries can see as a negative, because it's like, well, why couldn't you get yourself in, a good spot in the game? Like, whatever, in an alliance, like whatever the case may be. But then other, juries might look at it as like, you were very adaptable, which I look at it both ways too. And I actually tend to lean towards the, hey, how adaptable can you be? I mean, one of, if not probably my favorite winner of the new era, Rachel, season 47, I think she was one of the most adaptable Survivor players of all time, definitely of the new era. I mean, you look at what she did in her season, having her, tight alliance early on blindside her, and then she's at the bottom, and then things that happen at the merge and, through the merge, whatnot, and at the end. So I think being adaptable is probably one of the best traits of a winner on Survivor. And I think Aubrey has had that, going through. So I think she has a cleaner win if she gets to the final three without Tiffany. But as I said, when I talked about Tiffany too, I do think that Tiffany has a best shot of three if she gets there without Aubrey. Just because of what I'm saying, I think she has a better shot of getting votes from different groups of people. But with that, we're going to move forward to Jonathan. I think him and Joe definitely could potentially split those honor and integrity votes. But I think he's had a better season strategy-wise. And I will give him credit, as much as he has annoyed me and a handful of other Survivor fans and whatnot throughout the season. I do think he's had some decent moves, even if they've annoyed myself for going after some of my favorite people that were on this season, D, and you can go on the list, whatnot. But I will give Jonathan credit, just as a pure gameplay and Survivor, looking at the game that's being played. Give him credit that he's had a good season in that front. Definitely a lot better than his first season in terms of the gameplay stuff. I mean, obviously his physical, challenges, all that stuff, that's always going to be there. But I do think he has improved in the game front of things, not just the physical side. So we'll give him credit there. So the split votes, the honor and integrity stuff, I think people would and probably should give him more votes than Joe would potentially get in a split there, just because I do think he's controlled more stuff and been adaptable, be willing to blindside people and whatnot, where Joe doesn't really want to play the game of Survivor. At least that's what it seems, doesn't want to lie or have whatever the case may be. But we'll save that for Joe. But the way he handled D going out and some of the other instances, could be a factor. But he did have a good relationship with Ozzy, so I think that could potentially be something to look at as a potential swing, is that relationship with Ozzy. If we're potentially talking about, possibly splitting votes there, who's that other person there? If it is Jonathan and Joe, and then one of Rizzo, Tiffany, Aubrey, like if we're splitting votes there, splitting votes like across the board, and Ozzy, I think Ozzy could be a potential swing vote in the jury. So we'll also see there. But I think Jonathan's best path is, I think the best path for everyone not named Aubrey and Tiffany is getting Aubrey and Tiffany out. So I think that happens there, and then it's trying to split votes enough between the Rizzo, Jonathan, Joe. I think that's each of their three's best final three, is the three of them and Aubrey and Tiffany not being there. I think that gives them the best shot to win. I think that's what gives Jonathan the best shot to win. But then Joe, his path, like I just said, Aubrey, Tiffany probably got to be gone. And then it's people being mad at Jonathan because he was maybe the one that was a little bit more of, maybe a little bit more vocal about making moves and whatnot throughout the season. People being mad, not wanting to give Jonathan the money. Or people not wanting to give Rizzo the money either, and, the honor and integrity group just wanting to give that money to Joe for playing an honorable and, integrity-filled game, and, not wanting to play Survivor and lie and, backstab and do all this stuff that you need to do to win this game. But the honor and integrity group might just want to give someone the money for not playing Survivor. So that's kind of where I sit at that. So as I said, just to kind of recap, all of that was, Tiffany or Aubrey, if either of them gets to the final three, solo, I think they clearly win. If they both get there, I worry about splitting votes, between them and the honor and integrity group, potentially, muddying things up. I think it could get a little too close where maybe one or two votes decide things. But I think if either of them get there just themselves, then I think they're in the best shot to win this thing. If Rizzo gets there, then, without Aubrey or Tiffany, I think he's got a pretty good shot here. Just has to convince, maybe one or two people over Jonathan. And then Jonathan, kind of same thing. And then Joe, I just think has, he has a little shot there if people being mad at certain people in the final three. But I do think the least amount of shot, or the least likely winner there, is Joe. So now to what I think will happen. We'll start at the final five. I think Aubrey goes out at the final five. Don't think she wins the immunity challenge, and I think they're able to get her out at 5. At 4, I think they're able to get Rizzo out. I think, Tiffany and Jonathan will kind of work together and, talk about how Rizzo's strategy able to keep that idol in play for so long. That kind of worry about what he could do, at a final tribal council. So unfortunately, I think Rizzo goes out at 4, not in fire making though this time, but I think he goes out at 4th again for back-to-back seasons. And then in the final 3, I think it goes Joe as the 3. I think Jonathan at the 2, and I got Tiffany pulling out the win and winning Survivor Season 50. All right, so that's how I think that's going to play out. Now we do have, I forget if I gave a prediction at the end of last week too, but we do still have 3 fan voted things that will be revealed in this one. First off, what is the Final 4 immunity challenge? Well, I hope it's Samotion. I think it's going to be Samotion. I know people maybe got sick of doing it every season, but I think for this season, this moment, Samotion feels right. So I hope we get Samotion. Could be wrong though. It looks like a pretty big challenge, I'm guessing, for the final 5 that they were showing. So that's my prediction, is Samotion for the final 4. And then will there be final 4 fire making? No, I don't think so. Even though I like it personally, I think it has its good things and its bad things, but I don't think we get a final 4 fire making. And then obviously we know we're getting a live reunion, so we know the third answer there for the 3 things that are going to be wrapped up from the fan votes from this season. So anyway, that'll do it. That's how I think this finale episode will go. As I said, we'll be back Thursday morning to recap the entire finale and talk about it all. So just make sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.